I'm preaching here on the floor today. I'm going to tell you why. Yesterday, we had the privilege of hosting a conference on human trafficking, and that group met in this room. I want to tell you, and why I'm down here is because I wanted to highlight and help bring you into the fact that something very sacred happened here yesterday. And it's hard for me to put into words how proud I am of our church, that our conversations and our prayers have led us to the place where we would just have a little bit of openness to open our doors to a conversation that needs to be going on. And I'm very proud that it had happened here. Now, part of this is understanding what we mean by human trafficking, because in the past we've used words like prostitution, which implies that a woman and men and women both make the choice to live a certain way to make money, to employ sex for money. But what human trafficking helps us understand, and that terminology helps us understand, is that nobody would ever choose that. That very often the reality is that people are forced into a way of life through their powerlessness, through not having a voice, and through evil systems that are at work in the world that capture them, that entrap them, and then create this very ugly, dehumanizing, abusive, soul-killing reality for them. And to be just a little more blunt about it, that the church is not exempt from that kind of world, that we get drawn into that. And honestly, some of the sickness of this that comes really from the hand of the devil himself is that some of that abuse happens through church people and inside churches. So it's a big deal that people who have experienced that came here yesterday in the openness that this would be a safe place. And yesterday afternoon, for a couple hours, 5 or 6 ladies sat here and told us their story. And when they were done, I was so moved, I wanted to do something. And so afterwards, I told them this is what I was going to do. I was going to not preach up there today because I wanted to just leave that space as sacred. To celebrate that we gave voice to people that don't always have a voice. And to remind us that God can use any experience for good. Because here's the thing, and this was not about pity, it was not sympathy, it was certainly moving. But what you saw was a very raw, very edgy sort of group of ladies who kind of told it straight. And there's just no sugarcoating that, but it was the most authentic thing I've ever heard. And the thing that was the same about all of their stories was they had claimed God's power to transform them despite the awful things they'd been through, and believed that God had somehow rescued them so that they could use their experiences to help other people. And they all had different ways of doing that. One had a radio show, several had ministries where they would interact with women and then bring them into a safer place and have places to stay and businesses that they founded and just tremendous things. One of those ladies has a ministry where it's a tattoo ministry because some of these folks are actually branded. Can you imagine that? Branded like cattle or property through a tattoo on them as part of a message that they aren't of any more worth than that. So this ministry takes those brands, those tattoos, and transforms them into something beautiful, into artwork. And one of the ones that I saw yesterday was of 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, claiming the beauty of God's love over the ugliness of that other claim. One of the tattoos was a scripture from Genesis 50. And that scripture, if you go look it up, Genesis 50:20 says, what you intended for evil, God intended for good, and is going to use this to save many people. That's the paraphrase. And that was the story that we saw yesterday. People using their experiences as awful as you could imagine to help other people. What has God placed in your hands? Experiences that could be used for miracles. But here's the reason why I felt like it's important to leave that space open, is because this space needs to be that kind of authentic place. That we can't come in here and bring fake stories. We can't come in here and pretend to be something that we are not. The only way this works and the miracle that happens is when we take whatever it is and in the truth, let God's love transform it. Does that make sense? You have a story And it's not always pretty. It's not all good, and it doesn't always polish up very well. I have that kind of story too. But when we give those in truth to God, he can use them. I might start preaching, so I'm going to stop and give you one more thing. What can God use? What has God placed in your hands? Resources, experiences, and then opportunity.